Welcome back to the No More Lazy Thinking series, where every time you tune in, you have an opportunity to build your mental might. Today, we're going to talk about source credibility. And the reason I want to talk about that is because there are so many sources out there. It's practically impossible to access every single one of them on any topic, and it can be really challenging to know which ones are the best ones to rely on. I have a degree in journalism, and many years ago in journalism school, we learned about the notion of source credibility. There are basically three elements that we all use when we determine whether or not a source is credible. And those three elements, well, they go hand in hand, but sometimes we prioritize one element of source credibility over another. Let me tell you about the three elements, and then I'll tell you about their interplay. The first element, the first thing that we look at when determining whether or not a source is credible, is we consider their expertise. In the topic that they're reporting on to us, does that source have expertise? Do they know more about the topic than we do? The second variable in source credibility is the trustworthiness of the source. So do they have expertise? And is this a source that I feel like I can trust? And then the third element is dynamism. How dynamic, how inspiring is this particular source? Now, as I said, there's interplay between these three variables. So let me give you an example. Maybe you know about Groundhog's Day. February 2nd, at least here in the United States, we pay attention to whether or not Punxsutawney Phil, the groundhog, sees his shadow. Now, this is all just for fun, but we do look at Punxsutawney Phil as if he is going to be a credible source, when frankly, the only one of those three variables of source credibility that Phil has working for him is the dynamism. It's fun, it's interesting, so we pay attention. Punxsutawney Phil has absolutely no expertise. I mean, really, the groundhog seeing his shadow or not, that's actually going to depend on whether the sun is shining or not. It has nothing to do with the groundhog. And in terms of his trustworthiness, Punxsutawney Phil's record is about 50-50. So he's really not all that trustworthy. But we pay attention because he's dynamic. And then we sort of forget after February 2nd what he said anyway. We can see the interplay of these three variables in, a typical courthouse scene in any movie. In a movie, we have an expert witness up there on the stand. And the expert witness does have some expertise. They are an expert witness because they know something more about the subject than the jurors or others in the courtroom do. But an expert witness is only as good as their trustworthiness. So, of course, the opposing attorney works really hard to discredit the expert witness. They try to poke holes in the testimony by asking questions like, are you being paid to give this testimony here today? And the attorney who hired the expert witness is just hoping that the expert witness will bring some dynamism, not bore the jurors, not talk over their heads, not put in so many details that nobody can keep up with what they have to say. The most effective expert witness has the expertise, is able to maintain their trustworthiness, and is able to be dynamic so that they can be understood. We need all three in the ideal source to determine whether or not they're credible. Now, in our own critical thinking, we need to be sure that we're also evaluating the sources we choose, not just for their dynamism, not just because we trust them, and not just because they know more than we do. We need all three of those things to be in place. There are sources out there that have a hidden agenda. After all, most sources stem from some human, and we can tend to be swayed by our own subjectivity, by our own preferences, by what we're being paid to say, by our own inclinations and beliefs that cause us to have a confirmation bias. Now, confirmation bias, that is one of those mind traps that we're introducing. A confirmation bias, and you've got one too, we all do. A confirmation bias causes us to go looking for the sources that affirm what we already believe. We don't give equal weight. We don't spend as much time. We don't open our minds up to consider what comes from sources that challenge what we already believe. The problem with a confirmation bias is that it thrusts us right into an echo chamber where we are only seeing and hearing and being exposed to what we already believe. And frankly, that's not very valuable if we're to be good critical thinkers. We want to go out and find sources who have credibility, including expertise, that challenges our own way of thinking. How else will we get exposed to other ways and other opinions? And we want to think about trustworthiness not because it confirms what we believe, but because the person making a postulate that's different from our own can be trusted due to their own convictions, trusted enough at least for us to consider what they have to say and to use our tools of evaluation to bring it alongside what we already believe. Source credibility matters. If we don't consider the source and their credibility, we'll find ourselves making decisions and relying on information that isn't very useful and doesn't serve us well.